Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. Fat. I can't believe
that. Hello and welcome to episode 171 of Americans Watching the Footy. Good time of day to you wherever you may be. I'm your host, Ethan Castle.
I'm your co-host, Benjamin Castle, and Ryan Harambe is, I believe, underneath Ethan's bed. This is the round 10 recap, the first part of the Sir Doug Nicholls round. I think I should just play the Roger soundbite here, because we had plenty of that.
This was an interesting round in terms of themes and narratives and stuff. The one theme that I didn't even realize until I thought about it today before we recorded, 8 of the games were a Victorian team against a non-Victorian team. And the non-Victorian team won 6 of those 8.
Also, a huge range of scoring frequencies of the round in general. There are certain rounds where things just get really waterlogged and a bunch of games are low scoring. But we had just this super wide range here. And I think comparing those games against each other makes each one more interesting. I think they stand out for each other a lot more because of that. For example, when the Gold Coast Suns put up their highest ever score in Darwin, no less, when there are 2 games where neither team reached 75. So about the Suns,
the mighty Sun.
26-8, 164, defeating Geelong 15-10, 100.
Whoa! Where did that come from? Whoa!
Yeah, what the fuck was that? I consider it really bad to give up even over 100 in a game.
And this is, I believe, the highest score that Chris Scott has conceded.
Some interesting historical facts that you got to pull out about this game, which kind of make you both realize, wow, this is really rare, and damn, we've got it pretty good that this doesn't usually happen. Most goals allowed by the Cats since round 1 in 1994. First time allowing 150 since round 14 of 1999 at Adelaide. First time conceding 20 goals since the 2017 prelim at Adelaide. I said during the preview that I was not super concerned about the forward line, even without Tom Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron, because you've still got Ollie Henry, Tyson Stengel, and some other really quality players. And
getting time into Shannon Neal is a good thing.
Yeah. And as it turned out, they got to 100 because of some garbage time points. It was 55 after 3, but the takeaway from this game shouldn't be, damn, they had no shot without the forward line. It was that the midfield got clapped and the defense got clapped. The midfield getting clapped is not surprising, but the defense being given a red bottom like that is not good.
I remember people were laughing over your use of red bottom, but it's appropriate here.
Yeah, so I got to give credit where credit is due. It's constantly used on a college basketball podcast, the Old Terps. Andrew Terrell likes to drop that line, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, Gold Coast gave Geelong a red bottom in the forward 2/3 in general. I said from the beginning that it was going to be rough sledding for the defense. As soon as I saw they brought Zach Toohey in for Sam DeConing rather than Connor O'Sullivan, that is not like for like, and it meant that Jack Henry would have way more responsibility, and Henry was not up to the task for the second game in a row. I doubt he'll be dropped, but there needs to be some
sort of week off, or multiple.
There needs to be some change around him, and if DeConing is going to be out for longer, then O'Sullivan needs that time. That's clear. You didn't think it was going to be as much of an issue at first, and then you realized, shit, he was right. Toohey did kick a goal, still would have been much better with O'Sullivan in there. And I also remember you talking about how the Irish players playing in warm and humid conditions would not work for them. I thought O'Sheen Mullen was the best out of the 3, but O'Connor looked lifeless, which is surprising given what he's been able to do to lock down midfielders in the past.
if he's not tagging somebody right now, he really doesn't have a point of being out there, which is frustrating because he started the year off really, really well. He has it in him. I'm not doubting that. Just right now, it's not happening. So unless he's tagging and maybe you throw him on like Tom Green or something this coming week or even Toby, I would not complain if he's not in the lineup. But yeah, the biggest evidence that like this was a bad idea to have Tui in there was pretty apparent the moment you saw Zach Guthrie trying to go up against Sam Day, who is a very large person
and who shouldn't be beating this Geelong back unit even though they're shorthanded. I mean, credit to Day for cleaning up.
He's a quality player, but he should not have overwhelmed them like he did. It was him. It was Jack Lukosius once again looking like the greatest player in the fucking world, which seems to be a thing against Geelong. Yeah, I think we're just going to have to accept that.
Lukosius with 5 straight from 16 and 5 assists as well.
He's going to get his, and you can live with that. But when also Day and Ben Long were doing it, that was the issue.
And Bailey Humphrey with 5.
Yeah, give credit to Ben Long, though. I thought he really didn't offer much and shouldn't have been in the forward line or even selected over a lot of their younger guys. And hey, he's made his case and honestly played really well. So he deserves credit where credit's due, but we also made it a lot easier than we should have for them.
The Suns' biggest weapons were their handball overlaps and their long kick accuracy. You have said, I remember other people saying, every team has that game where your opponents are just going to kick super accurately and you're going to get blown out for that reason. Here's to this being that game for Geelong because, again, 26-8.
Granted, their expected score was still like 130 because they really weren't challenged much at all. It's not like they were hitting like some super high difficulty set shots. There was maybe 1 or 2 all night where it was just like, damn, they hit that.
I think the vibe was more, damn, this is constant traffic and you're kind of getting sick of it. But I almost expected Long to have at least one good game, if not 2 in the Northern Territory. He did get 1. Joel Jeffrey with a goal from 21 and 605 meters. He can play wherever the hell he wants, and the team should just accommodate that because he's an incredibly versatile player. And Lloyd Johnston with another active game too. So the 3 available Northern Territory players all lifted as the Suns completed the Darwin double for the 3rd year out of 3. They're 6 for 6 in this Darwin tendency. And they also got over 12,000 there. This is their biggest crowd since they started hosting games there.
We let our Northern Territory fans down, and I'm disappointed by that. I hope if they go back in the next few years, they do it like what the Ravens did between their first and second trip to London. Because the first time they got fucking killed, and then basically they decided, all right, we're going to do the exact opposite of everything we did. Like last time we got here on Friday, we're going on Monday and spending the whole week there, all that sort of stuff. It's like, do the entire thing the exact opposite next time. I will say, second best player by Champion Data and easily Geelong's best player by the eye test, the obvious winner of the Polished Turd Award, Brian Myers. Good game. But yeah, this was ugly. From the time Shannon Neal dropped a mark mid-second quarter, would have been able to kick a goal to cut it to 5. Instead, the Suns went from there and for the rest of the half, outscored them 34-2. That was really it. And the third quarter was just as bad, if not worse. 50-17 third. Even in the first quarter, it was like we were kind of getting outplayed and just scoring off broken plays and counterattacks. But I think one thing that you can take away from this game is like, this is the sort of method that can get you a higher scoring game in Darwin. Just a lot of counterattacks and scoring off broken plays instead of being really conservative.
It's a ground that encourages that sort of fast play and maybe discourages as much defensive running just because of the size of the ground, they were saying. So you combine that with the defensive issues that Geelong had, and you can see why this high score was coming. And, they didn't do themselves favors. The neon shirts didn't do them any favors. Holy fuck. I'm glad it didn't have anything to do with the outcome. But at one point, free kicks were 17-3, when it probably should have been like, I don't know, 14-7. It's like there should have been a disparity. The Suns were the better team and should have had the advantage in free kicks, but not to that degree. 2 teams with 2 sets of rules. Brett Roseberry working another Geelong game. Second week in a row. That feels weird to have an umpire on the team's game for the second week in a row.
It seemed intentional, especially after, like, Chris Dott's comments after the Port Adelaide game were like, there's nothing wrong about them. It was just like, here are the umpiring things that kind of confuse me, but we need to remember that it's a hard game to umpire. It sounded like he had a good meeting with the league and then clearly didn't, because they were out to get him for this game. Let's not act like that wasn't the case. But
you know what? I do blame Chris Scott, but I don't blame him for the whole umpire talk. I blame him for list selection and game management. There have been problems over each of the last 3 weeks. Managing Mark O'Connor and Brandon Parfit against the Demons, not having tags each of these past 2 games, either on Butters or on, honestly, probably should have been Noah Anderson, considering
he could have done it on Rowell too, although there's a good chance Rowell just fights through it because he's so strong.
Exactly. And you've seen O'Connor be able to clamp down on Neal, but Neal's a player who's able to get out from stoppage. That's how I see guys like Noah Anderson and Stephen Cornelio, who I would say maybe you should get the tag this coming week.
Well, he hasn't even been that good the last couple weeks, Cornelio. Again, I would, if I'm tagging anyone this coming week, and we'll talk about this more on the preview.
You know, it's Tom Green.
It's either Tom Green or Toby. Plus, I think with Toby, there's always a chance you can kind of like get under his skin.
But continuing with the criticism of Chris Scott, bringing Tui in over O'Sullivan.
It's one thing if it was planned all along, but I don't think this was.
No, this was treated as like a surprising laid out for, I think, hamstring tightness.
Yeah, I think maybe it was one of those things where like they were looking at, the conditions and everything and decided like, yeah, we need to play it safe here, which I get. The only way that was a planned change with one of his traditional laid outs would have been if he was planning all along to have Zach Guthrie go up against Sam Day, which just doesn't make sense.
No.
Also, Zach Guthrie, here's a positive. Zach Guthrie was just like okay for this game, and that's like the worst he's played this year.
But that was a baffling late change. And it meant Tom Atkins had to cover more defense when that isn't his job in the first place. And he got real discouraged from things in defense.
I was very disappointed. And I think if you really want to send a message to the team, you omit him this week. It's tough because like you want to keep the players happy. One of the things that they did that I was a little surprised by is like the players that were like managed for this didn't even travel up. I don't know if that's just like, yeah, hang out, take the week off. And that's part of what kind of keeps the attitude of like, yeah, this is a great place to play. It's very player friendly. Or if it's like, yeah, stay back and, do some training stuff. I'm not sure what the process is behind that. I thought it was weird. I didn't especially like it, but it's worked for all this time. So I'm not saying you got to change it. I just thought it was interesting. That's definitely not something you see, like, for example, in the NFL, unless you're rehabbing, you're probably traveling with the team.
What the fuck?
I'm sorry, if I sound a little distracted, Graham Harambe is going nuts and just like knocked a bunch of stuff off of a shelf.
Well, he was trying to jump up to the windowsill and missed. And while he was flailing, he knocked over stuff.
He knocked over multiple stuffs. He knocked over clothes I have sitting out. He knocked over my little desk fan. He knocked over the heater.
Yeah, that was substantial. So while Ethan fixes that, I'm going to continue with this. Recurring issues that Chris Scott hasn't fixed. His hesitation to deploy tags, not playing Max Holmes on the inside, especially with Mitch Duncan and Cam Guthrie struggling and Duncan having been managed.
Cam Guthrie, outside of his first game, has not been very good.
And for some reason, refusing to bring in Mitch Hardy and Sean Manna, who are continuing to prove themselves ready for recalls,
or in Hardy's case, a call.
Continually surprised that it hasn't happened. And even though the Giants will be without Josh Kelly, GWS is the type of team against whom I think his inclusion would make a lot of sense. And it would make sense this week, too.
I'm already thinking ahead to the game against the Swans because, there's a talk, and we'll talk about this in a bit, about James Jordan and how good his defense has been and how good he's been as a tagger against midfielders.
Outside mids in particular. Would we go to Holmes?
Well, no, I think Chris Scott's going to come in and say, you can't unleash James Jordan on us. We don't have any good midfielders. Well, I mean, Holmes is being used way too far back. I would move Holmes up into the actual midfield, and I've got a bunch of changes I'd make for this coming week. Obviously, bring back in Hawkins, Cameron, Duncan. Keep going with Toby Conway instead of Reece Stanley. I thought Ned Moyle played pretty well, in addition to just being huge. Conway held his own against him. Stanley would have been awful in that matchup because Stanley just body-wise isn't built for it. Even like the best version of Reece Stanley in his prime isn't built for that.
Obviously, you'd bring DeConing back in if he's healthy.
And then I would get in O'Sullivan and I would get in Mitch Hardy. And then I would take out, Atkins. Dempsey just needs a rest, and my guess is he would have been rested this week to begin with if Cameron was available. Cam Guthrie, that might be part of a management plan for him anyway. More likely they manage a bunch of dudes for the Richmond game, but I would do at least one this week. Jack Henry just not playing up to the level he needs to right now. Zach Toohey, and then I guess Mark O'Connor for the other, I guess.
So you just wouldn't tag?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're a team that tags every week to begin with.
O'Connor's been damn effective the past few years when he's been, though. Do you want to give him that chance, considering it will be a clear strategic change from this past round?
No, I mean, he could tag Shea Bolton the next week. Again, I do want to mention the Suns were not losing to anyone when they play like this. This was one of those, like, this is what it's supposed to look like games. The midfield trio was awesome. Lukosius up front. Defensively, I mean, I don't think anyone was that great, except, like, I like the way Bodie Ulen moved play out of the back.
Second week in a row there.
They were the better team, and we're going to win this game regardless, but I was disappointed with how uncompetitive it was, especially on defense. And, like, the play that sums it up is Tom Atkins standing there watching Jack Lukosius pick a ball up off the goal line, which I forget who else had that issue a few weeks ago, but that can't happen. On the other hand, Shannon Neal, when he had no hands on him, was like playing with oven mitts, still worked his ass off after dropping marks. So, like, there are things that you can show off in the film, both positive and negative hustle plays.
You were talking about James Jordan earlier, and I think that's a real nice segue into talk of the Friday Nighter, because he was a focus point again, largely putting the clamp on Sam Walsh. Really, after the first quarter, Jordan thoroughly stopped Walsh.
Gus was at, what, double-digit touches after a quarter?
I think that's right, and he only ended up with 20 despite that, as the Swans 17-15, 117 defeated the Blues, who did 9-11.
I think the question to ask after this game, other than injuries, what can stop the Swans? Because this is, like, very clearly the best team right now. You know, people are talking about how close everything is.
Well, yeah, maybe second through 13th.
Yeah, the Swans, though, are just, they're so fucking good. It was, I mean, take your pick. Warner, Heaney, James Rowbottom had, 16 tackles? And I didn't think it was even one of his best games.
I just like looking at the percentage and stuff right now, and just the ladder in general. The Swans have allowed the fewest points. They've scored the most. Their percentage is 154.7. And it's not like they ain't played nobody, Paul.
No, they've played and beaten a lot of good teams, and it's just like...
And yet they've lost to Richmond.
What, other than injuries, would do them in? Maybe, like, the only thing I can think of would be, like, you know, trouble with fitting everybody when guys like Luke Parker get back, although now he's about to get suspended for a pretty dirty hit in the VFL. If you can see anything from it, the lighting at this game was absolute shit.
Yeah, not great lighting at Kinetic Stadium in Frankston, but it looks like the league is asking for 5 or more games, considering he was directly referred. I think the one thing that maybe could slow down the Swans a bit is if the tall forwards struggle, because Logan McDonald's been off to a decent start.
I think he's been excellent.
Joe Lombardi has been inconsistent, but Hayden McLean has been able to make up for it. You know, it's been fascinating to watch how the Swans have just kind of shifted away from really centering everything in their 450 around Buddy and realizing we could just run a whole bunch of small and medium-sized goal kickers into things. I mean, they were able to do that before, but I think without Buddy, it's even more apparent. And when you have a pair of goal-kicking midfielders like Warner and Heaney, then holy fucking shit, good luck stopping them. This has all allowed Errol Golden to shift further back too, which I would not have seen coming at all, but Golden is doing a very nice job engineering some play from the defensive 50 as well. So if you had questions about depth there, I mean, I'm not sure why you would have, but Golden's been able to flex back. Justin McInerney's been flexing forward in response. It's just, there's a lot of versatility on this team, and that's another thing that is making them so entertaining and so difficult to stop.
They're just better than everybody, and it takes away a lot of the excitement at the top right now. I think more of the excitement is in, you know, the battle for the other top 4 spots and going to be the battle for like 5th through 8th. Brody Grundy was better than Mark Pittonet outside of the first quarter. Sam Wicks was awesome.
And yes, the team actually got around him when he kicked a goal, so you can shut the fuck up on that.
I know there's been like allegations of whatever there. I don't think it was like what Corey Perry was alleged to. It seems like, for those of you that follow hockey, he wasn't messing around with a teammate's mom. It was like some other team employee, probably.
No, the Corey Perry is not Zach Wilson.
But Carlson, it's one thing to get beat by a better team. It's another to get off to a great start. lead 27-1, and then just completely get your ass kicked. At one point from there, the score had swung 95-17. You got to ask, because this has happened a few times with Carlton. They got off to an amazing start. They're such a good first quarter team, and then
can they just not counter other teams' adjustments? We talk about John Longmire being such an excellent strategic coach. Maybe is there a question around Michael Voss kind of not having that in him?
Is it coaching? Is it just running out of gas after starting really strong? I think you can probably...
You know what? With the amount of injuries that the Blues have as well, I think maybe that's something to factor in there. And they also lost Jacob Wiedering at halftime to Corky. And you could see in his absence how important to the team he is. We talked about this with Alir a couple weeks ago for Port, how in his absence, it's very clear that he's the club's most valuable player. That's clearly the case for Wiedering as well. But the main issue for the Blues came in the middle. Again, after a week where it looked like they had fixed things at stoppage, it all came undone again. Remember, they conceded an average of 45 points from stoppage in rounds 5 through 8, and it was well over that Friday.
You mentioned Wiedering, and they had slipped and gone behind even before he came out. He was at less than 100%. But the scoring off stoppages where it's on one hand, they're great at creating scores when Pitnet wins center clearances, but they're also not really providing much resistance if he's not.
And in terms of the defensive struggles, it's things like not being able to support each other as well in one-on-ones, not knowing when to leave assignments as much.
It reminds me, in terms of their strengths and weaknesses, a lot more of their 2022 team than last year's. Clearly this team is better than the 2022 team. I don't think they're going to have as hilarious an ending to their season as the 2022 team. But some of the same sort of strengths and weaknesses are showing up. I think that's something we can all agree on. Both of us.
By the way, over 44,000 there at the SCG, joint 5th highest crowd ever for the venue.
That's good. I'm a big believer in generating more support outside of the traditional big Victorian clubs and really making sure that this is Australia's national game.
I think Magic Round being this week probably helped with that.
That probably helped. Also, just the Swans being really good and playing against a big-time club, because there were a lot of Carlton fans there. I guess the weather got worse between then and Saturday afternoon, but unfortunately it didn't help get anyone to show up at the showground. More on that later, but yeah, I think my big epiphany out of this is just this Carlton team reminds me of a better version of the 2022 team, not as much of last year's team, even though they have had good success in close games mostly. The Crows did kind of pop that bubble. Also, when they got off to that 27-1 start, Tom DeConing seemed like a big part of it, even though I think he only had 3 disposals officially. I just thought he was everywhere he needed to be and involved in contests and opening stuff up for other guys. And then after the first quarter, didn't really see much of him. He's another of those bellwether guys, barometer guys.
This might be a good off-season project for us, figuring out who the barometer is for every club. We could do a whole episode on that.
Oh yeah, I think we already have a pretty good indicator on a couple of teams. Collingwood 12-6-78 defeated Adelaide 11-8-74. Collingwood jumped out to a 50-20 lead, and it seemed like, all right, this is probably done for. And then the Crows had a bunch of forward time and didn't do a lot with it. Then they finally did something with it, got the last 3 goals of the first half. Things started to get interesting, and it seemed like Collingwood were just going to fend them off each time because they kept stretching it back out to a 2-3 goal lead. And then Isaac Rankin kicked an insane bouncer from the pocket to give Adelaide the lead with 7:15 left.
Even at that point, you would still think, yeah, Collingwood's got it. And guess what? They did. DeGoey with the final goal with just under 2 minutes left. The Crows made a couple last pushes, some undefined entries. Then it looked like they finally got something on the left side. Isaac Rankin with a really big run. It's too much of a run. It's a correct call, but a call that you hardly ever see, and that's why everybody was so butthurt. And then also you factor in that it was against Collingwood.
Absolutely, the Crows were robbed. Right in front of me.
Yeah, that was the vibe out of this game, and I don't think you can entirely blame Crows fans for that. But at the same time, this game should not have needed to have been that close. Had they made better out of that 10-plus minute patch early to mid-second quarter, maybe we wouldn't be talking about the Crows coming up just short, and maybe they could have carried some momentum from there. It reminded me a lot of the sort of trouble they had last year. The difference is they actually kicked more accurately.
I want to discuss the call itself. First off, it was 24.2 meters. It was not marginal. He ran closer to 30 than he did to 15. Second, in the moment, even before the call was made, I thought, oh shit, he ran too far.
I was already saying too far, out loud as I saw it.
Third, and I've said this before, I am a believer that you don't officiate a game differently because it's the end of a game. You should be calling the game the same way from the start to the finish, with the exception of if it's a blowout and you just want to get a game over with. I understand that. I mean, I get, like, if there's a marginal call, not wanting to blow the whistle in the final seconds, like, but there are some, where a dude, like, absolutely gets mugged on the goal line in a contest on what could be an after the siren goal. Or this, it's not like he ran maybe 18 meters. It was 24. It was the right call. And
it was something we could...
I just hope that this gets called more consistently in all phases of the game, because it shouldn't be that hard to figure it out. Although I would like as a reference point, like the different sort of stripes and patches on the ground. And this wouldn't work at the Adelaide Oval because the ground is basically like all one color there. But for everywhere else, at least, let's make sure that, the patches on the grass are exactly 10 or 15 meters.
I believe it's 9 at the MCG is what they were saying.
Let's make it 10 or 15.
Well, he ran over 2.5 of them regardless.
Yes, he ran too far. It was the right call.
Dana was frustrating, though.
Frustrating, especially that it keeps happening to the Crows.
Right in front of me.
But I want to talk about why Collingwood were in front in the first place and why they won this game. They were better in the midfield. Nick Dacos, Scott Pendlebury, I say to a lesser extent, Josh Dacos, Jack Crisp, Jordan DeGoey.
The whole cast that you would expect.
They outplayed the likes of Laird and Crouch, and really, I think, other than Jake Saligo, the Adelaide midfield just wasn't that great unless you count Jordan Dawson's midfield work, or, well, I mean, he's not really a midfielder, but when Rankin got into the midfield, because let's not get it twisted, Rankin played an awesome game, and his performance should not just be remembered for the play at the end,
in which he also did his hamstring.
It didn't look that bad in the moment, but that could have also been a pure adrenaline thing. But
crazy thing is, this is the second time that he's pulled his hamstring in a late game comeback situation at the G in less than a year, because he did it against the Demons in July or August last year. But yeah, he finished with a goal, 30 disposals, 16 contested possessions, 8 clearances, 699 meters. The midfield wasn't lifting, so he just said, fuck it, I'll do it myself, and he did it himself. Nick Dacos didn't need to do it himself. It still got 41, 22 contested, and 14 clearances while launching 3 scores himself, even when the rest of the side gets healthy. He's got to stay in the middle at this point and keep DeGoey flexing between the midfield and the forward like he is. The right mix is there among, the stars who are in this game for Collingwood. You've got enough supporting pieces around them. Another solid game out of Joe Richards. I would say keep him in. I think it was that he got Mark Keane, or should have gotten a holding the ball call against Mark Keane late in the game, and that wasn't called. And Collingwood fans were saying that kind of the Rankin call was justice in that respect.
There needs to be a nickname for Dacos, kind of how there's Pessy, because he only scores on penalties. There needs to be a version of that for Dacos, where he never actually gets into contests, and then how he's getting rid of that label, because he's been unbelievable.
He is the player of May at this point. Just realized the AFL doesn't do any player of the month awards or anything.
Yeah, that's I guess that's more of an MLB thing now that I think about it. We can make it a thing.
Nick Dacos is clearly the player of the month at this point for May.
Yeah, I think for April it would have been Heaney. Also, 100th game for John Noble, and I thought it might have been the best game he's ever played. 29 disposals, 6 rebound 50s, a goal, 2 assists. He did a lot of kind of just bringing the ball from the defensive 50 up into the middle, and was really hard to stop.
One of his most active games outside of the defensive 50.
And you combine that with the work that Braden Maynard, Darcy Moore, and Isaac Quainer did in the defensive 50, and it's kind of amazing that Adelaide even got to 74 points, which, again, testament to Rankin.
And in terms of the rebound play, Steele sidebotted with another solid game at half back. That is sticking.
Remember how he looked really washed after 3 or 4 games? He looks not washed now.
2 straight weeks of good games at half back. How much do you want to mess with things that are working when you're, accepted best 23 comes back in? Well,
Let's have some fun with stats here that kind of paint a picture. Crows with 9 more inside 50s. Collingwood nearly 12.5% more efficient inside 50.
That's the very Crows thing that I was talking about earlier. It's not last year when they had their struggles, it was actually more converting, but I didn't think they'd set themselves up at the forward 50 a lot of the time that well. And so some of their kicks were rush or less optimal angles. This time they just didn't get off the shots at all.
Taylor Walker was not really doing anything to distribute, even when he was taking marks further away than just where he should be taking set shots. I thought this was a down game for him. It hasn't been a great year for him altogether, just from a goal-kicking standpoint, but this was the first time I really noticed struggles from like a decision-making angle.
Crows were plus 42 uncontested, by the way. Just another one that kind of seems incongruous when you're talking about the result.
I'm going to go back and watch this game in full to watch more from the individual perspective. Also, this was your game in terms of taking the lead. I mean, I obviously got really tuned in down the stretch, but at times I was less engaged and was kind of paying attention to other stuff that was going on. What was that during the Stars Avalanche game? No? Yes. The Stars being the Avalanche and double OT was going on during that, and that was absolutely deserving of my attention. I'm looking forward to going back and coming up with more of an evaluation of everything here.
Last thing to the people talking about step count, stride length at top or near top speed can easily be greater than a meter. There's also such a range of sizes in the AFL. Here, I want to give a real life example. Watch Brian Harambe walk and watch him run. I think that's a good example. Greater Western Sydney 6-7-43 defeated by the Western Bulldogs 8-22-70. Yuck. The yuck is for the scoreline as opposed to the Bulldogs play. They won for Taylor DeRay and his 200. They won it for Aidan O'Driscoll post-retirement. I think it was Aaron Naughton wearing O'Driscoll's shirt before the game, which was a nice touch. Even though Callan Ward tagged Marcus Bontempelli and kept him to 18, the rest of the midfield listed for the Bulldogs. One of the most active and successful contested games for Adam Treloar and getting a lot of midfield intercepts as well, showing much better instincts than he'd shown probably all of the last month.
In a game in wet conditions, he was largely not phased. Despite those conditions, he only had 5 turnovers. And when you have 35 disposals, that's
23 contested possessions as well.
Yeah. I still don't even think he was on the list of players that I had the biggest positive takeaways from in this game.
No, that would be Ed Richards for the second week in a row.
The numbers don't do it justice. The 27 disposals and 10 clearances. He controlled the midfield. If you told me Marcus Bontempelli was going to get limited to 18 touches, only 10 in the first 3 quarters, and then the Giants lifted the Callan Ward tag, which I haven't been a huge fan of Ward's work with the ball, but without it, I liked him. No Tom Liberatore, although now it looks like he's, a couple weeks away from being back, which is awesome.
Yeah,
we approve.
Yeah, cleared to return.
That's good.
It was just vapor lock and an ankle injury.
Bulldogs kicked nearly 3 times more behinds than goals. I would have thought they would have gotten the shit knocked out of them, and instead, no, they won this game by 27 and could have won it by a lot more because they were just clearly the superior team.
Plus 21 inside 50s, plus 13 from stoppage clearances. They controlled the ball throughout the game. And I'm continuing to be amazed by this unleashing of Ed Richards into the midfield. He is the Bulldogs barometer. I think that's pretty clear. But
oh yeah, I said that even when the Cats were beating up on him and gather around. And then he helped make the game close late. He might be the most obvious barometer, bellwether, whatever you want to call it, of all.
We would usually see it at center halfback, and now we're actually seeing it in the center square. Was this something that Bulldogs fans had been expecting, to have Richards go down the field and into the guts like this? It seems like a shock to me, given the kind of midfield depth that the list has, and that Riley Sanders still isn't getting a game, but it worked.
Sanders should still be in there. I will maintain this. I will also maintain that omitting Buku Kamas was bad, especially when Alex Keith went 0 for 3 against Jesse Hogan. In fact, Hogan and Toby Green kicked all of the Giants' goals, all
6.
Woo! So yeah, I would have Kamas over Keith, and then I don't know who comes out to get Sanders in. Maybe Riley Garcia, who's been a little quieter.
As long as it's not Caleb Daniel. Daniel, by the way, only came in because Jason Johannesson did his hamstring again. Johannesson was off to another good start this year, and hopefully this isn't as long-term an issue for him as it was in 2023. But the Dogs figured out the mix in this game. They played the conditions better. I think they also played the Giants better in the rain in the first meeting last year in Canberra.
I remember that game being more cold than it was wet.
It got wet late.
I think it's time to be legitimately concerned about GWS. Like, this is a team that should not be scoring 43 points.
Hey, they can win while scoring 47
on, like, basically mud in Alice Springs. That should not be used as a relevant comparison at all. Like, I know you were joking there. I'm just making the point for people who maybe don't understand that. But, like, why is James Peatling not in? He had played great, got dropped for no reason, has continued putting up great numbers in the twos. This makes no sense. And I know this team has had a few injuries, but they should not look this bad. This was like a very wet fart.
And they've been able to make up for midfield absences this year and last when they've been without Canelio and Green at times. It hasn't phased them. And even though I think Josh Kelly might be more structurally important than either of them, they should have the horses there to make up for it.
Well, now Darcy Jones is going to come out because he's injured, so maybe that just means playing Xavier O'Halloran further forward. But you got to do something. I don't know if it comes from taking out Jacob Ware or Toby Bedford, who I think has been not great this year, but better. Like, you got to have Peatling in there. He never did anything to merit being removed from the team. I get why he wasn't in the first place at the start of the year,
but he should have stayed at this point. And
would it solve everything? No. This team has some other issues, like Harry Himmelberg just hasn't been up to his usual standard. He's had a lot of the ball, but hasn't really done anything. I mean, I'm sure this coming week, a bunch of those guys are going to bounce back because they come to Geelong and guys that have been struggling suddenly play great. That's the most important game in this coming round, by the way.
Is that the most cracking as well?
I think so. I think it's the most cracking.
Most important, I think, is an easy one, though.
Other games that I'm looking forward to this coming round, by the way, if we're just getting on this. Freo Collingwood, Dogs Swans. I'm not going to get myself excited for Blues Suns because it's the Suns on the road. However much the Blues are favored by for that game, it's not enough. It's not just that the Giants have lost 3 straight. It's one thing to get outclassed by a really informed Swans team that right now just looks like the best team. And then Essendon, who's just been playing really well lately.
And then another, deep midfield. Look, kind of getting things together.
The issue is not that they lost this game. It's that they looked lifeless. They scored 43 points. They were beaten in just about all areas other than Jesse Hogan, who deserves a lot of credit for playing through the conditions. He was a very easy choice for the polished turd for this game. He did not play like it was wet. A lot of guys did. He didn't. He deserves credit. He's having an insane year. There is real reason to be concerned. And I mean, this is a team that has the talent to be as good as anybody.
And unlike last week, there was no tag on Lachie Whitfield. He had all sorts of rebound opportunities.
He also had all sorts of turnovers.
I said last week, on that note, that they need to have more people involved in starting those actual rebounds. Is that a way to get Harry Himmelberg back into things? Is that how Nick Haynes needs to be deployed more as maybe the first or second disposal out of defense?
Game high 7 turnovers for Whitfield. Felt like more. I guess, sometimes who turnovers get credited to
can be a little fuzzy.
And turnover numbers weren't as high as they felt, 77-69.
But the fact is, last week the Bombers stopped the source of the tsunami, and this week the source couldn't recover.
Couple last Bulldogs observations. James Harms has been in really good form since a lousy start to the year. This game, 2 goals, 2 behinds, 18 disposals, 9 score involvements. Really good job in both the midfield and the forward 50. Not so much linking those 2 spots because he was kind of in independent roles there, but really good in both. Lachie Bramble and James O'Donnell were both decent. Bramble got a little bit of time forward and did well with it. And I didn't really watch him closely in his debut because it was a game that you were in charge of that I had absolutely no incentive to watch closely. But I liked how Joel Frazier moved the ball out of the back. He won me over. There were a couple of plays in the second half where it's like, yeah, this guy should stick.
St Kilda, 8-7-55, being defeated by Freo, 9-18-72. So amazing inaccuracy, and it didn't end up costing the Dockers at all. And this is just another game where you question the merits of Ross ball at the top level. I mean, the Saints have the list to play other styles, but they aren't nearly flexible enough. And this should have been much further blown out than 17. Again, when you look at the volume of scores, 15 scores to 27, that says a lot there, as do the plus 12 marks inside 50 and over 25% better efficiency inside 50 to the Dockers' favor. Oh, and plus 17 clearances, right? That kind of explains it there. But amazingly, the best player out of all of this was not a Frio midfielder, perhaps?
I thought it was Jordan Clark.
Now, don't get us wrong, the Brayshaw and Sarong duo played very well off each other, but in terms of actually engineering play from the back, oftentimes it's Luke Ryan, where it seems like everybody's on a string attached to him.
I thought that was true to an extent, but I thought it was kind of both him and Jordan Clark doing that, and Clark, in doing so, ended up not just kind of starting the sequences, but, I mean, dude can run all day, and he was in the middle of sequences. He wasn't just in the back.
Is this something that you saw from him during his time at Geelong?
No.
But you probably miss him now.
I mean, I think we would probably be deploying him as more of like a ball-moving defensive midfielder than more out of the back. But the combination of like him and Zach Guthrie doing that stuff with Max Holmes playing a little further forward would be nice now that I think about it.
Clark's ability to spread the ball both inside and out has been really valuable, especially when you got the outside more structure this year with thanks to Jeremy Sharp.
And then I thought Angus Brayshaw had a pretty quiet first half. As I'm looking through these games, I'm trying to think, who would be my Brownlow votes or coaches' votes? And he really didn't register first half. And by the end of the second half, I thought he was one of the best players out there. I know we've kind of used the term of like line breaks, and I think he did a bunch of that in the second half.
I think it's a valid term to bring over from rugby.
Here's my thing with this game, though. I was impressed with the Bulldogs despite their kicking inaccuracy. I thought, like, damn, they played a really good game, just were by far the superior team and looked, other than not kicking straight, excellent. I didn't think Freo looked that great. I'm just really disappointed with the Saints. And in this game in particular, it's funny because like the commentary, from the broadcast team and from some like the studio analysis before, during, and after was about Rowan Marshall versus Luke Jackson.
I mean, that was a pretty even battle.
Numbers-wise, it was pretty even. I mean, they both had 39 hitouts. Marshall had 31 disposals to Jackson's 25, but Jackson, 21 of his 25 were contested. Jackson, 10 clearances to Marshall's 8. Marshall, 9 tackles and 7 marks. Jackson, 6 score launches. But I was so disappointed with Rowan Marshall in this game, which is especially funny when I talked last year about how he deserved way more respect and far more Brownlow votes for his performances.
I mean, he's the biggest reason you campaigned for us to start this whole America's Brownlow thing. And instead of actually getting real defined clearances for the second week in a row, people just notice him getting the ball on his boot without a second thought, just turning and kind of yeeting it forward right away.
That's exactly how I described it. It's great to have a ruckman who can just pull it down out of the middle, but like, this is a waste of his abilities if it's just like, yeah, you're going to yeet it forward, especially when you're not facing a team that's like got bad defensive marking. If you were to do this against like Alex Keefe or late career Dylan Grimes or something, sure. But you have enough midfielders that this isn't your only option, and it's not like you have that mismatch up front, so it's really pointless. And I want to know, is it something he's being instructed to do? Is it something he's choosing to do? Because it's just a waste. I mean, there aren't many ruckmen that can go toe-to-toe with Luke Jackson. He can, and he could have outplayed him if he had actually utilized his abilities well. And instead, it was just like, this is pointless. You don't have Jake Waterman, who's marking everything right now. You don't have Nick Larkey. You have Max King, who's solid, but you don't just need to bomb it ahead to him. And most of those kicks that he was bombing ahead were, going to kind of just the edge of the forward 50. King was in the expected one-on-one with Alex Pearce, and I think Pearce got the better of him by a bit. It wasn't like a pronounced dominance like Pearce had in a couple other games. Like, which one was it where I was so high on him? Was it against the Crows with Walker?
That might have been it. I mean, there were a couple of them very early season where we just lauded Pearce.
Where it was like, oh my God, Alex Pearce is back.
But I'm just still continuing to be frustrated about Rowan Marshall and how his play is giving a slight to the entire midfield. You've got Jack Steele there, who can work his way through contests with no problem whatsoever. You've got Mason Wood, who was our polished third pick, and since returning from injury has locked down that spot again. I mean, there's no doubt he's in that best 18. I want to see those two get the ball more.
Like, yes, they miss Seb Ross right now, but they're still not that bad without him.
Seb Ross is not your midfield. Paddy Dow getting in for his first game and kicked a nice check side goal too. I would love for him to have been involved more. We thought about what he did last year and how he was often the first man on the outside, especially in Sam Walsh's absence when he was hurt for the Blues.
Liam Henry's back, and I thought he kind of faded as the game went on, which isn't surprising coming off a hamstring injury. You know, it takes a while to build up that endurance, no matter how much work you're doing. Like, getting that actual game time matters. God,
there's so much more that the Saints could have done, and it starts with their inability to make anything out of their stoppage wins.
Such a waste of ability, and this team is now 3-7.
They have the same record as the Hawks and Eagles.
Because, yeah, they beat Collingwood, Richmond, and North. So they have, like, one legit win.
Not even, because that was Collingwood struggling.
Still, they played well in that game. I'm not going to discredit that win, but it's just...
It's funny, though, that you're talking about Pierce this way when, in our discussions, we didn't even talk much about him. If you're talking about
he was important in limiting Max King, which, you know, if the Saints are just going to bomb it forward, you need to be able to limit him.
But he was outshone in defense, perhaps by Ryan in terms of movement, clearly by Clark, and also from somebody that I'm supposed to be thinking about, not you. Heath Chapman is mine.
Yeah, I was like considering Heath Chapman to be in the best 3 players, possibly, definitely in the best 5,
despite his low volume touches, just impact per touch. How many did he have for the game? Something like 11?
Yeah, numbers-wise, a very unremarkable 11 disposals, but he had a couple of key spoils. He kind of extended his interceptability into the midfield, created a couple of rebound 50s. There wasn't like a single stat I could find that illustrated how well he played. I guess 4 intercept possessions out of 11 disposals, sure. 4 spoils, okay. 3 rebound 50s, but nothing there that tells you like, oh yeah, this guy was awesome. But like, this is one where actually watching the game, and especially watching it in real time and understanding, you know, like which were the important high leverage moments, then you really see just how vital he was. And I think in terms of the actual defending, he was the best defender. Like, obviously Ryan and Clark are the ball move, but in terms of actual defending, Heath Chapman was really good. Other than, I mean, Mitch Owens took a cool mark against him that was definitely touched off the boot. That's the one knock I have against Chapman. And you can't really fault Chapman because it was a nice play by Owens, who is just, they're not taking advantage of his ability. Also, Matthias Filippo, he's not playing that well, but this system is not conducive to him. And it sucks because when he burst onto the scene last year, it was like, whoa, what a great pick. So much talent. This is part of the fun, young Saints and the bright future, and everything's going great. And now it's just like, he's just being underutilized. And I don't think he's playing very well right now. Dropped a couple marks, missed a couple shots when he did have chances. But I think Ross Ball is kind of suffocating his ability. Can't find who it was searching Twitter, but someone on Twitter had said, it was Collingwood fan Beat Gordon, who said, I was so high on Filippo pre-draft, but he's been Ross Balled in record time. The sooner he gets back to Adelaide, the better. And it sucks because, again, this guy's good. Darcy Wilson provides some electricity. I really like watching him, even in this game. Couple of assists, 7 marks.
He's shown in Jack Higgins' absence.
The pieces are there, and they don't fit what Ross Lyon wants them to do. Also, even if Freo would kick better, that over-under of 148.5 was way too high. I forget his name, but I think the NCAA&T football coach has something to say on my behalf.
Tell him to bring me my money.
Yeah, that was an easy bet. I'm also hammering this week, and maybe I'll make it my, instead of like Track My Brown. Remember, didn't I do like, you know, the Stone Cold New Jersey Gambling Radio Lock of the Week guy?
I'm not sure if you ever done that on here, but you did it with me.
Okay, well, I had to under on this one, and next week, Carlton's going to blow Gold Coast out of the water. They're going to beat them by way more than 16 on this, the day of my daughter's wedding. You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
If an ad just played, yay, maybe we made some money from it. If it didn't, well, fuck.
I mean, you could also just subscribe and give us money.
Give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money.
We should start like a Patreon or something, huh?
We can also have people subscribe to us through our Spotify for Podcasters page, so that's always an option.
We should just set ourselves up on a bunch of sites so that people give us money.
If you want to follow more of our thoughts for free, for now anyway, we're at Americans Footy on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Individually, I'm at BenjaminHK01, Ethan is at Castle Media, and Brian Harambe at Cat Named Brian on Instagram only is making himself comfortable underneath the bed. I think he's much calmer right now.
Towards the start of the show, he was really having fun.
Yeah, playing with the,
a lot of things.
The springs that stop the doors, failing to get up to the windowsill.
The little bookmark string thing on my little notebook that I occasionally use.
You're going to have to deploy that a couple times still as we figure out our final votes for the round.
We do have all of our polished turd votes for the round completed, though, right?
Yes, we do. And finally, a couple players have notched their third, those being Luke Davies-Uniacke and with his 3 in a row, Daniel Rioli. More on each of those games in just a bit. But first,
we're not going to take very long on the next game.
Brisbane Lions, 26-7-163, defeating Richmond 6-8-44. Hey, this final score's familiar.
It's A, funny because you get to laugh at Kane Corns and Port. B, it's funny because the original one, it was actually 24-19. If you wanted to see a team kick 200 in the grand final, that could have been the day.
And the fat lady sang, I think it was, 8 minutes into the second quarter?
Also, shame on Joe Danaher because I really wanted someone to score more than 164 this week, and he had a shot late that could have done that.
Sorry, the Suns win the round by 1 point.
However, Brisbane 26-7-163, St. Kilda Fremantle 17-25-127.
Hell, Gold Coast 26-8-164, Collingwood versus Adelaide 23-14-152.
GWS Western Bulldogs 14-29-113.
Yeah.
I can keep going.
Port and Hawthorn even. That combined for 159.
23-21-159, yeah. Anyway,
congratulations to Josh Dunkley on a success in his 150th game. Boo to Richmond for not wearing Darius or Doc Nichols round jumpers. I thought there was going to be some sort of jumper clash reason, but I think they wore black.
I don't know if it's they just wanted to save him for Dream Time, or we can't blame this one on Fanatics like we can blame every bad jersey thing in the U.S. Fanatics sucks, by the way, and Michael Rubin sucks.
Richmond were the only club this round to not use.
Yeah, Essendon had theirs. I mean, it was Essendon's home game, but still, what the hell, guys?
Yeah.
I did not watch this game closely, but every time I looked up, Kai Lohman was doing something good. He kicked 5. Charlie Cameron kicked 5, so a lot of country roads.
And Kai Lohman, that meant lots of oops, I did it again.
And I'm not sure, did we get wagon wheel for Bruce Revel's first career goal? Reville, I keep forgetting, remind me.
I've heard Chris Fagan say Reville.
Well, either way, I'm glad he got his first goal. I was hardly paying attention to that game, but at the same time, I still was excited for him. What else is there to say? Richmond,
Shadow Braid, another solid 1-quarter cameo. Hopefully he's getting...
Give him a full game.
Why not at this point? I thought this would have been the game to do it. Kind of experimenting with things against a lesser opponent.
Yeah, hopefully Shadow gets a full game at Hawthorn this week.
Richmond getting another injury with Kelty Lafau actually not having his jaw broken, but hurt enough to keep him out of the game.
Was he concussed?
The greater injuries came in the VFL for Richmond, with Sam Naismith doing his 4th ACL.
Here's the thing. Sam Naismith is probably not an AFL caliber player, but you're going to pull for the guy after he's been through that many injuries. And now I really hope he sticks with it, because like if he gets back on the field at any level now, it will be like a massive whip. If the AFL has the equivalent of the Masterton Trophy, that's the type of guy you give it to. Yeah. Steely Green, he didn't really do much of anything, did he? I mean, he debuted. He played.
Debut didn't look terrible. All-time Footy names derby.
For a quarter.
Hey, it counts.
We could have had more. They should have been like tagging each other for the entire game.
But we had Steely Green, Shadow Brain, and Hugo Ralphsmith on the oval at the same time.
Hugo got a goal, right?
No, he got vultured. He got vultured by Matt Coulthard, who was sub. Glad to see him get another opportunity. I remember him having a couple of electric games after being a mid-season pickup last year.
Look, what are you going to get out of this game other than padding percentage? Richmond is literally unable to field a quality team right now, and even
At AFL or VFL level, VFL got beaten by 110 by Sandringham.
and even if Richmond were healthy, I mean, where would they be on the ladder? Probably around like 14th-ish, 15th, maybe 12th or 11th at best.
This was the toughest polished turd decision that we have had yet.
Just out of 22 or 23, let's say 21. Let's not count the player that gets subbed out or subbed in. You know, maybe that happens if it's a really late or really early sub, but it's hard to come up with one for this game.
We ended up going with Dan Rioli for the 3rd week in a row. I think the other best candidate would have been Kane McAuliffe in one of his first full games. Looking like he belongs in the middle. So there's a good game for development for him against a very tough midfield. Having him stick with Lachie Neal at times, it's those small individual developments that you're really going to have to look for here. There's not much else. Shea Bolton had 7 clearances, but wasn't anything, revolutionary at all. He didn't really show its Shea Bolton-ness. Richmond this year are going to be as tough to watch as the Eagles were last year.
What were the redeeming qualities of watching the Eagles last year? Oscar Allen? That was about it, right?
Oscar Allen, at times Tim Kelly, Elliot Yeo went healthy.
It was this Richmond team. I mean,
Shea Bolton, Dan Rioli, Dusty, Toby Nankervis when he's not concussing his teammates. Yeah, he kind of concussed Ryan Mansell as the two of them went up.
this team could get back towards watchability with Liam Baker, Jacob Hopper, and Tim Taranto all coming back not terribly long from now. Plus, I guess Jack Graham, if he's ever actually going to stay healthy.
And Tom Lynch and Jack were also on the mend.
Taranto and Hopper, I think, are the two most important, along with Baker. This will still be a poor team, but it will not be this bad. Again, big picture, this is not the worst thing that can happen to your club. It means that guys that wouldn't be getting AFL games get a chance, and it means you're going to get a really good draft pick. So use it well, and be glad you didn't trade this year's pick. Be glad you traded last year's.
And be glad that you already recorded one win.
Yeah, because otherwise, look, if this team hadn't won a game yet, that would be something to worry about. It sucks, and I've said this a few times. We finally get Dreamtime by itself, and in return, we get the shittiest Richmond team imaginable.
Well, at least we'll be able to watch a very good Essendon team.
Are they very good? I think at this point, I'm just going to put them in the category of good until proven otherwise.
Okay,
How good, I don't know, but good.
Essendon 16-10, 106, defeating North 10-6, 66. That's 11 in a row head-to-head. And North have still conceded 100 every game and been more than 4 goals adrift at the final siren.
However, they are the only team to have avoided a goalless quarter yet this season, which is kind of amazing.
I believe that Swamp said that's the first time in VFL AFL history that a winless team is the last one to have scored in every one of their quarters. It's incredible that it's happened even once.
And it's incredible, especially that it's not like happening because Nick Larkey is the only source of offense. He's been just kind of decent. But I have not watched this game in full yet. I did not sleep much the night before this game, worked the day of, took a nap during it. Still haven't watched the whole thing in one sitting, but it seemed like Luke Davies-Uniacke and Harry Sheasel versus Essendon's entire team, basically.
It did feel like that at times with Zane Dursma providing a little bit of run and Tom Powell being physical.
I will say what I did notice from watching the first half again, and I'm going to try to go back and really watch this so we can get our votes done. First off, this is a game that coaches votes. You could probably come up with 7 different players got coaches votes here. Okay.
Peter Wright with the unanimous 10.
That seems surprising.
Yeah, I mean, yes, he did kick 4, but it was 4-2. And also against a first gamer, so baptism by fire for young Will Dawson.
Yes, he kicked 4-2, but 9 marks and 11 hitouts backing up Todd Goldstein, who got a really nice reception from both fan bases. That was really nice.
The one thing that was missing from this game was a Goldie goal.
I mean, those are pretty rare altogether.
Exactly, and so it would have been even more special in this game.
But what I did notice from the first half, I think it's funny, Zach Merritt not getting into the coaches' votes this week when I thought the first half was maybe the best half he's played all year.
Overall, the midfielder that caught my attention, it seemed like most people's attention, was Jai Caldwell. A really complete physical game out of the middle. The other thing on which people fixate about Caldwell is that he always sweats up a storm. Does he have hyperhidrosis or something? Because like immediately upon Caldwell entering the game, like people start talking about it instantly.
I got to pay attention to that because I've never noticed. I've noticed, oily Tom Hawkins and oily Buddy. I have not noticed this, and I will look out for it. And maybe it's, again, because I haven't watched this game in one sitting, but it's been hard for me to take away much on an individual player standpoint. I mean, I guess Charlie Combin's still doing a pretty good job in the back.
Harry Diesel actually playing in the middle, and holy cow, they're so much more watchable and competitive with him in there. Him along with Wardlaw, just like, why has this not been happening since the beginning last year?
Harry Sheasel has the license to make the plays that Adam Treloar wants to make. The no-look handballs and shit. You could make like a whole reel of Harry Sheasel no-look handballs through his first season and not even a half.
What else to take out of this game? Matt Welfy's 100th, another 3-goal performance for him. We think of him as kind of the player from whom everything spreads out.
The showerhead.
Exactly. Now, that was one of our titles, I think, in the preseason, but a lot of play has been funneling more toward him as of late, so it's been nice to see him kind of flexing some of his offensive abilities.
He can give you multiple roles as a forward, and I made sure to word that carefully because, I've learned through listening to Baseball Barbacast, if you say he can do a lot of different things to help our team, that's code for he sucks. So I wanted to make sure not to say that because Matt Guelphy does not suck.
No, he can give you a couple 3-goal games. He can also clamp down as a defensive option.
He can give you assists. He's a well-rounded forward.
And here's to his better health.
So Essendon pulled away in the third quarter. What was the difference in the third? Because I think other than that, this honestly probably the best game North's played so far this year, maybe?
Question mark?
Well, let's see. Which other game could you say they played better in? I mean, round 2, they played a half. I thought they played 3 quarters here. This was clearly one of their 2 or 3 best performances, which not saying much, but also they were competitive for 3 out of 4 quarters. They should not have been down 12 at quarter time. They played better than that. They won the second quarter by 5, and they won the fourth by 5. They lost the third by 38.
Essendon were able to take Essendon took a lot of advantage off turnovers, and the third quarter moved really quickly from there. Just fast movement through the midfield combined with greater pressure, and you knew that North wouldn't be able to keep their foot on the gas the whole time. It was a down quarter from them, and Essendon in general seized it. A couple nice things for North, though. Toby Pink, I guess, getting his first career goal. I still don't think he touched it at all.
Oh, no, I'm convinced he touched it. I'm just not sure if it was touched by Peter Wright after. I'm convinced, though, that Toby Pink, the bottom of his boot touched the ball. He kind of sort of stood on the ball.
If he did.
If that's a goal, it should be his goal. I'm just not sure if it was touched after. And I think that's one where, the review takes so long. And it's not so much that things were inconclusive in the typical sense. It's that the angles kind of contradicted each other, which was strange.
But they gave him the goal. The other funny thing out of this game was Cam Zurhaar going from fuck yes, I'm going to hang for a huge mark to fuck I dropped it to fuck no, I pulled the ball in. Fuck, I'm gone.
Zurhaar at least is starting to get back towards being super tough and kind of being, is his nickname the Bull?
Yes.
Okay, good, because it should be. Port Adelaide 11-14-80, defeating Hawthorn 12-7-79.
I did not expect the obnoxious public address announcer to be yelling, Yarda Pulti, at the end of this game. Actually, I did.
You did at the start?
Yes, I did before it started, but after Hawthorn kicked 6-1 in the first, no, I did not.
Okay, so I've got a few takeaways from this game. I'm going to start with how conflicted I was. On one hand, it was funny seeing Port come out and shit the bed after winning the World Cup last week. On the other hand,
As a Geelong fan,
there were a lot of Hawks fans preying on our downfall, and I was okay with them getting their comeuppance, but also I really like what this Hawthorn team is doing. Also, it's funny to just see how unpopular Port is among, like, a lot of fans of other teams, where I can't quite hang it on them quite like that, but I mean, I can see after the game last week, like, yeah, Zach Butters can kind of be a turd at times, and Hinckley just danced around like that on the sidelines is fucking annoying. I mean, it's funny, my thought coming into this game was, like, you know, during the pregame, they had shown, like, the results of the last 5 meetings, and most of them were not close in terms of margin. Like, Port had only won 3 of the 5.
I remember Hawthorn won big in Adelaide in early 2022 when Port got off to that really bad start.
Yes, so their last few meetings before this game were by 55, 64, 34, 10, and 31. And I thought, okay, it's going to be not very close, and it's probably going to be Port winning. You know, I thought Hawks are due for a game where, you know, it's like, all right, we've won a couple, our work here's done. And instead, they came out and jumped out to a 38-7 lead.
Blake Hardwick kicking 4 goals in the first quarter when that was his career high for a game before that, which was also set earlier this year. Remember, Hardwick didn't even start the year forward.
Yeah, Hawks led 38-7. They had 17 inside 50s to 4, and they could have had more, but Cal Shadir needed like 3 tries to kick a proper snap, which he got early in the second to bring the lead out to 44-7. And then Port started to make it interesting. They cut it down to 22 by half. And with the rain starting, you thought, okay, going to be tough to come back in those conditions. Hawthorn gets up by 41 midway through the third.
And then they score 1 point from there. They went into lockdown mode too early, perhaps?
Way too early. And during some of the post-game coverage, like, it was pointed out that Will Day, who I thought had played a tremendous game, it was dumb that after center bounces, they just kind of threw him back defensively during the fourth quarter instead of keeping him in there.
I mean, he's versatile enough to play in the back.
But, like, look, he was your best midfielder, and there's no need to yank him out of that role when he's doing a great job contesting against a midfield that was reduced just to Zach Butters and the horny one. So Connor Rosie...
Hey, credit to Willem Drew.
Yes, but Connor Rosie sounded like he was going to play, and then on Friday they knocked him out, and then Ollie Wines had heart palpitations and got subbed out in the second quarter, but it sounds like he also might play this coming week. But yeah, Willem Drew did play well, and Kane Farrell did a good job stretching the field, but like, it was the one midfielder who really brought it the whole game for Port was the horny one.
Here he is again, the horny one.
Whereas Day was there throughout. I thought Jai Newcomb was contesting really well and making things physical. Connor Nash, even though he's had a bit of a down year, ended up with 7 tackles. And then finally in the fourth, Zach Butters took off. He had 16 of his 32 disposals in the fourth, and it still felt like it wasn't going to be enough.
But they had the power of a lightning bolt. Amazing translation of their song, by the way.
Yes, like if you look at the literal translation, it's really good.
The Bijan Tajara translation of that. There's even like appropriate lyrics talking about the dreaming.
It's awesome. But first off, Hawthorn had a chance at what could have been a dagger, but Connor McDonald hit the post. That made it a 22-point lead, 79-57. Port then kicked, 4 straight behinds, with basically at that point, Hawthorn had already, for these final 11, 12 minutes, really been playing up against the ropes. I thought Josh Weddle was just spoiling everything and did a great job in that quarter to the point that he was almost the one that saved the game for them.
Even as you get into the final 2 minutes, you don't look at this game and think, oh yeah, this game needs a final 2 minutes video in the first place.
No, you think, all right, maybe they get one more back, but the Hawks should hold on. It was, 79-68 at this point.
And it was bizarre that this lockdown strategy had worked for so long.
Look, yes, but it felt like they really let the walls cave in and they're lucky to be here. But it still felt like, all right, they've done this long enough. They're going to pull it out.
Campbell Brown even said they were home.
I thought they were. And then they caught a huge break when a Blake Hardwick kick went off Jace Burgoyne's boot. And then I think it actually hit his arm or something, or I think it may have been his head. Either way, it probably should have been a throw-in, and instead it was called out on the full or insufficient intent or whatever. Either way, Jai Newcomb...
It was out on the full because it was directly off his boot, they thought.
Even with, 40-ish seconds left, they hadn't gotten it into the forward 50 here. Hang on, I've got to figure out.
Well, it took Dan Houston having one of his typical bombs into the 50 for them to even get a look. By the way, Houston had 2 gigantic overlap goals from 50 or beyond. And I guess Hawthorne didn't learn, like Geelong hadn't learned either.
Well, no, Geelong is with Kane Farrell.
Okay, but the point is, it happened twice, and Port have both Farrell and Houston capable of doing this, and the Hawks still were negligent. So what time did Houston actually kick the ball into the 50 even?
With 43 seconds left, Kane Farrell has it. He kicks to Houston in the midfield. With less than 40 seconds left, they finally kick to enter the forward 50, down by 11 points.
Willie Rioli then gets a free kick because Blake Hardwick held him. Hardwick shifted back into defense.
And he shifted back earlier, even before they made the sub, which it was a sub that, as the way the game played out, didn't help the Hawks.
Luke Bruce for Chunkwith Ja.
That's a sub that if you were looking at this game beforehand, it's like, all right, if nobody gets hurt, we're going to play CJ for 3 quarters and then take him out for Bruce. That would have been great, except they were up by 28. If this game had played out the way you would have expected, fine. But as it turned out, that sub didn't do them any favors because of the position they had put themselves in.
It required more defensive work from Hardwick and for Weddle to fucking spoil everything. Seamus Mitchell keeping up in the back 2/3 was nice. Probably his best showing of the year. But getting back to the final scores for Port, Rioli knew that he didn't have time to waste.
Good situational awareness.
Immediately went back and kicked it. It was a longer kick as well. I think it was right around 50.
That was his 3rd goal.
Right.
That goal, 23 seconds left. So, all right. They've got 23 seconds for one last chance.
You'd expect they need a mark or a free kick.
Yeah, and I had said, like, I got to read my text to you.
You were talking about how Jason Horne-Francis was the clear polished turd winner.
Yeah, I sent you my final votes, and then you text me, now hold on a minute.
No, hold on a minute.
With maybe a minute left in the game at most. And I thought, like, okay, still, there's no way.
She told me there was no way.
You texted me, they don't get out to the lead without Blake Hardwick. They don't hold on without Josh Weddle. And about half a minute later, I have reason to say they don't hold on with them either. So my reaction going through this, I already had like mouth slightly open to the thought that Port could even win this.
I mean, like I said, I felt it in the second quarter much more than any other time.
Then Drew gets the center clearance. Josh slackens a bit more.
It's still like, wait, they need a mark.
They don't get it. Okay, never mind.
Blake Hardwick spoils. It comes to Massimo. Massimo handballs back to Carl Amon.
My question was like, why are you retreating there?
And then McEntee tackles Amon, and it sits for Darcy Burne-Jones.
Great soccer. Like, legitimately great goal. And it was 2 players in there, McEntee and Burne-Jones, that had done so little all game. And here they are creating that goal, and it's signaled with 2 seconds left.
You know how Carlton and Collingwood have had the situational awareness in these games in the last couple of years?
Hawthorne really did not there.
No, not at all. Between the game plan itself, how early they went into a shell, taking Day out of the middle where he had been so good, which was part of why Butters went off in the 4th.
Would you have said, because of this attempt to lock things down, you would have just kept CJ in? And not?
No, still would have dealt with that accordingly. I still think that you got 3 healthy quarters out of him, considering his injury history is, I was a win in itself.
I was surprised, thrilled that he came straight back in.
Yeah, I thought he was going to have another week in the twos.
So. We are very partial to CJ. Well, Box Hill was on a bye, so we asked, how are they going to manage this? Is there a way that maybe they would kind of manage him with limited time at the AFL level?
Yeah.
The answer was a surprising yes.
I mean, maybe it would have made more sense to put him in as the sub. But I guess, would you rather have the guy who pulls his hamstring all the time being subbed out or subbed in? I think being subbed out, I guess, makes more sense. And again, you're not planning, when you're planning this out, you're not expecting to have the luxury of a 28-point lead.
Let alone a 41-point lead in the late goings of the 3rd. Is this the largest lead that we've seen given up in our time watching the footy? Because the only one I can think of was Brisbane blowing the 40-point lead to Richmond.
How big was the blown lead by the Bulldogs in the final? It's definitely the latest blown lead of this size we've seen.
This is the second time that we've seen the winning goal kicked like this in the final 15 seconds in the first place.
The other being Kazi
Pickett, yes, round 21 or 22 of 2022.
Round 22, yes.
And the answer, by the way, was also 41. because it was 42-1 in the Bulldogs' favor in that elimination final. So this is the joint highest blown lead / comeback that we've seen at any stage of an AFL game since we began watching in 2020, I believe.
Yeah, this was an all-time comeback. For it to happen as late as it did is insane. And like I said, Carlton and Collingwood have clearly practiced all of those late game situations.
That's something that a mature, contending team, you expect them to practice that. Maybe just not something that a rebuilding side would be considering yet.
You're not able to focus on those fine-tuned things, but they need to learn something from this. And again, I've been very high on Sam Mitchell as a coach altogether. I think he will learn from this. I think he won't go into the shell too early. And I think his team will just figure out better situational awareness.
I think I need to use the Louis soundbite again. I used it for the first game of the round, and I think I have to use it for the last one, because Wallich Barawar, or West Coast Eagles, 16-9, 105, defeating Melbourne, 10-10-70.
Whoa! Where did that come from? Whoa!
If I had a nickel for every time Melbourne rebranded as Narm and lost to a team from Western Australia that also rebranded to use its indigenous name, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's funny that it happened twice. Or if you just extended this to Narm losing to a Western team 3 times, because they also have a loss to Freo that wasn't Walyallop. If you told me I'd kind of be half asleep for the second half of this game, especially in the fourth quarter, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me it was because the Eagles were the one comfortably ahead, I would not have guessed that. Like, look, if Elliot Yeo was playing, I'd see it.
But you didn't see the Eagles leading wire to wire.
No, they were just top to bottom, the better team.
Yeah, what?
So Tim Kelly, a week after struggling without Elliot Yeo, was fantastic.
Well, he didn't have Christian Petrarca to match up against as much because Petrarca went forward, but it also wasn't just Kelly. Liam Duggan with maybe his best game of the year.
I'm surprised he was only credited with like 3 contested possessions because he seemed to be involved in things more.
Just like next one on the outside a lot of the time. Fucking Dom Sheed, where the hell did this come from?
Dom Sheed played like, I don't know if he was good, but I noticed him.
No, I think he was legitimately good at this game and helped clamp down Clayton Oliver, which without Petrarca in there was even more important to limit him.
The defensive combination of Brady Hoff, Tom Barris, Jeremy McGovern, Alex Witherden a little bit.
Yeah,
all at times in his, 100th game?
Yeah, his 100th. Witherden with a second solid game in a row, and Hoff limiting Kelsey Pickett and Cade Chandler. They had a goal each, but I don't believe either of them came against him, or maybe one of them did, but Hoff continues to be involved in the rebounds as well. And Eagles fans in the same circle as us on Twitter are amazed by what Hoff is doing. And I said, yeah, I saw this coming, and I am considering now getting an Eagles number 19 jumper because of this dude. But it makes sense that Liam Duggan and Dom Sheed having their best games of the year together would result in a win. You just wouldn't expect it to be against this sort of team.
Jade Waterman continued to mark everything. 5-1, and he missed a couple. I guess there was one that he maybe missed short, but for the first half, it was like, damn, he's marking everything, but he's not kicking that well. And then the second half, it was just, everything was a goal.
13 marks for Waterman,
and he's taking them at so many different angles. This is insane.
To see him marking all over, being involved in the greater movement, when you are still without Oscar Allen, that is a huge positive sign. And
what's it going to look like when Allen's back? Is it going to look better, or is it like, I just aren't going to be as many opportunities? I don't know.
Hopefully, it'll mean that defensive units can't really focus on one of them as much as the other. And of course, Waterman did benefit in this game from the injury of Jake Lever, his concussion. And that was a very significant injury. It meant a total reshuffling of defensive matchups. He ended up playing against Tom McDonald, and though McDonald did, I think, lead the game with 9 intercepts, it was kind of by virtue of him being matched up against Waterman.
Okay, it was 10 intercepts, but McDonald also had 9 turnovers. I assume those were mostly on longer kicks that he got charged with those. I only noticed like maybe 1 turnover. Or what was the stat that Damian Hardwick,
the shit goal stat?
Yes, that's what it was.
Jack Darling was on Stephen May largely after that. Darling with his best forward pressure game I've ever seen, a dozen tackles. Well, that's another, where did this come from?
Look, you expect him to get 1 or 2 goals and take a few marks, but he was tackling not just in the forward 50, but around the midfield, around the wings. Where did this come from?
And Liam Ryan returning to a forward job as well and beating Blake Howes.
Look, it was going to take him a couple weeks to get up to full speed.
Yes, but also he'd been starting in the back. They'd really tried that in the waffle. And
That experiment can be thrown away now.
Even when you have Allen coming back and you may, and you know, are looking at a theoretical best 23, I think Ryan still belongs there, you know, on the interchange bench at least. And you know, we've always been fans of him for so many reasons, and this game is kind of reminding us why. And then going back to the midfield mix, we talked about the older guys lifting, but Ruben Jinbi had a very balanced game.
I thought his first half was outstanding, and then
he continued to rotate into the middle, maybe cooled off a bit.
Yeah, second half, I hardly noticed him, but I noticed Jaden Hunt a ton.
Yep, well, Hunt and Jinbi are types that you can rotate from those halfback flank and wing positions into the middle. And I know Hunt lifted against his former team there as well. You know, no spite there. He's got a premiership medal from them, but it was great to see that from Hunt. And
look, you're going to get up just even if you've got positive relationships because you're playing against your friends. You want to play better against your friends. That's normal.
But I want to keep this rotation happening with Jinbi rotating in the middle, even as you get healthier, especially when Harley Reid goes forward. I think it's finally time to talk about Harley Reid. We've gone long enough in our commentary without talking about him for this game.
This was one of the games for him. I forget, what was the play a few weeks ago? Was it in the Richmond game or was it in the Western Derby where it was like, oh my God, that's the guy?
Was it like the mark where he leapt in?
No, it was like midfield play, I think. Where he like juked someone or the one in the fend off, but it wasn't on Dusty.
Okay, like I remember the passing in the torch one. He fended off Petrarca and Oliver at one point. It was
one thing. And
then he ran away from Petrarca for a 3-bounce goal, which is probably in your top 3 for goal of the year at this point.
The goal itself was, it was a kick on the run,
but grabbing the center clearance, running away from Christian Petrarca, no less, and 3-bouncing it to create.
It was an insane individual effort.
And this guy is 18. And every time you see that jumper tug, Ethan, what do you think?
I really hope in a few years' time, he'll laugh at all of the times he did the jumper tug because he wants to go surfing or own a small family farm.
In other words, he'll just be tugging on hoops instead.
He's got the hair. You look at Sam DeCone and you look at Zach Guthrie, you look at Mark Blitzov, it's like, hello, this could be like...
Ollie Dempsey as well?
Yes, this could be like Super Blitz. This could be like Mark Blitzov's times 1,000. And I think people are aware of how good Mark Blitzov's can be. I was actually listening to the Mason Cox show and he was talking about how Blitzov's just like one of the best athletes he's ever seen. He's a former steeplechaser.
Yeah, and Mason Cox has a soccer background.
And basketball. Anyway,
he didn't even play basketball. He didn't even play organized basketball till college is the funny thing. But just the single-handed...
Yeah, the fend-off and the goal, those were both like very... Harley Reid moments in a game where his numbers weren't all that impressive compared to some of the others.
I'm surprised he got the perfect 10.
I think Waterman was the best player, followed by some mix of Reid and Kelly. This was just a really complete performance, and I think Melbourne, like we've talked about how important Stephen May is to their structure. I think you got to talk about Jake Lever in that as well. Maybe not like in terms of the structure itself actually looks like, but like how the matchups go, he brings a lot. Maybe we've just seen it more because we've seen them play more without May than we've seen them play without Lever.
I find it also remarkable that the Eagles were able to punish so well for turnovers against this outfit. Maybe that's something to be said there with needing Petrarca in a steadier midfield assignment to help limit that and use his rebound ability more, because the Demons came into this game conceding the third fewest points off turnovers, and West Coast blitzed them there. And it was with some good spread on the inside and out as well. They did use the corridor well, but it wasn't exclusively that. This was just a very well-rounded game in general, and I only have like one complaint in like one individual player, and that's that I would like to see Harry Edwards come in for Josh Rotham because Bailey Fritsch kind of punked Rotham.
I was surprised it was only 43,000. I thought it was more. Like, I thought last week when Freo hosted the Swans, I thought it was less than the 46. I thought this was more than 43, and I was impressed by like the number of D's supporters actually, which I don't think I've ever said in any context.
Well, speaking of D's supporters, Broden Kelly has said it might be time to transition to a restaurant review podcast in light of this D's humiliation. I hope his first review is of Entrecote.
I think at this point, we can now say, other than the game against the Orange team, the Eagles are officially a bitch to play against at home. You know, they have the 6-point loss to Essendon, which, yeah, they were down by a good bit, but they still made that competitive. They've been competitive in all but one home game, and that one was against a team that at the time was very much in form. I think already with these 3 wins and how Reed has looked, like, what do you want to see the Eagles do the rest of the way? I think
win a game on the road.
I think there are 2 legit opportunities for that, and I would not count the Western Derby among that.
No, that is not a road game. That is a neutral game. Even though the crowd will not be neutral, it's at your home stadium. You're probably thinking about the North game and the Saints game.
Those are the 2. Saints, round 19. North, round 22, which is in Hobart. Yeah, just win 1 or 2 away games. Don't win round 24, thank you. I mean, I hope that's a dead rubber, kind of like it was in 2022, where it's like,
wasn't that like the first dead rubber Joel Selwood had ever played it?
Yeah, it's like, we're locked into number 1, you're locked into
bottom 3, bottom 2.
Yeah, but I would like to see the Eagles go out and whether it's against Essendon or the D's again, one of those 4 games. Actually, you can also throw in this coming week at Adelaide. Just win something outside Perth, and I will consider this a very successful season. And then Demons, they kind of laid an egg. I'm willing to overlook this if they rebound this coming week.
They did make some adjustments second half. They restored some of the contest success in the third, but they also kicked 3-7 in that quarter.
I did figure out one other thing about the D's, but yeah, they could have made this game really interesting with how that third quarter went. They should not have lost that quarter. West Coast 5-0-30 to Melbourne 3-7-25.
They should not have lost that quarter. It did not feel like a quarter the Eagles won.
It felt like they weathered the storm, though, and that's a sign of maturity. Even though they were aided by some bad kicking, a less mature team crumples under that. So, good job.
D's have to get it right this week. They just have to. They're playing the Saints.
Yes, that could be a really rough watch, like as a low-pressure game.
Low pressure from the Saints. I hope the D's say, fuck you. We are imposing our style. We will run through the middle. Max Gawn will show Rowan Marshall how to actually do smart things once gaining possession in the ruck. Look, we like the D's here. We have no problems with them.
I will say, something about Simon Goodwin's facial expressions annoys me, and I can't figure out what it is.
All I know is I could see Simon Goodwin coaching the Saints in 2026.
I did have one other takeaway about the D's from this game. You know how Geelong is like the team of blonde guys with headbands?
What is Melbourne the team of?
They're the vein team because 2 guys, Max Gawn's forehead vein and Clayton Oliver's forehead vein. I know it's only 2 guys, but I don't care. They are the vein team. Any other just like takeaways? I mean, the only other thing I could think of that I never really got around to, I'm sure I'll think of stuff later and mention it in the round 11 preview. I did notice a few times just with Freo reversing the ball. It's like, oh yeah, that's a coach to learn from Adam Simpson. I got that out of this round.
Maybe some of the kind of lockdown attempts from Hawthorn were reminiscent of Adam Simpson as well, with how Sam Mitchell was under him in 2017 and 18 as a player and then coach.
Disappointing that less than 8,000 were at GWS. Yes, I know there was rain that kind of went off and on. Only a couple times actually rained really hard. Like, that's a stadium that has enough seats under cover that, like, what's your excuse? You've got a fun team to watch. Yes, they had struggled a bit the last couple of weeks. Like, this is still a fun team, and they're playing against something of a rival. Like, come on, guys. Let's go.
And also, there wasn't even rugby in town. It was Magic Round.
This was a rare week where we had both Sydney teams at home.
I think that was intentionally done to give some high-profile games.
I would like to have a week where both West Coast and Freo are at home because it would be easy when we make a trip to just be in Perth. Maybe it's a Friday, Sunday. Maybe it's a Thursday, Saturday. Maybe it's a Saturday, Sunday.
Fuck it. Western doubleheader.
Yes. I mean, the grass probably wouldn't be able to take it like the Adelaide Oval grass. That's still sort of like, why isn't the grass at Optus better? Everything else at that stadium is phenomenal.
We're looking forward to our pilgrimage. But yes, awards time now. Your round 9 Bark of the Week was Harry Reid, his second nomination of the season. Second in 4 rounds. His mark over a combination of Jack Darling and Billy Frampton. Wow, something negative to say about Frampton. That's actually kind of rare this year. Your round 10 nominees. Well, you know what, Ethan? Rank them.
Winner is Cal Achi, his hanger on Nathan Broad's shoulders, which I think is the second best mark this year, only behind Jamie Elliott. Number 2 would be Bailey J. Williams over Harrison Petty. And number 3 is Mitch Owens getting the leverage off of Heath Chapman's back. It was kind of one of those knee to the back for leverage, but also it was touched off the boot, which is why in the moment I didn't really notice, like, oh, damn, that's a great mark. Bailey Banfield had touched it, and I think it wasn't noticed because it wasn't like right off of Brad Hill's kick. It was a few meters away. But yeah, Achi's your winner, Williams second, Owens third.
I have no qualms with your rankings whatsoever.
Sweet. Round 9's goal of the week was Adam Treloar, where he took the Tim English tap and kicked with a right snap, surprising even himself. I think all 3 nominees this week are really awesome for totally different reasons.
Like, this slate of nominees is honestly as high quality as you'd expect to see on Brownlow night. You had Isaac Reichen on Saturday afternoon, taking the ball out of the stoppage and kicking a deep pocket, left-footed one bouncer for the lead. And that ended up being the second to last goal of that game.
That was the one for a brief moment, just because of how high quality a goal it was. We're thinking like, oh shit, man, they might actually do this? And then, like, if it was just a normal set shot goal, we're like, yeah, Collingwood still got this.
I see this finishing third in the round, which is insane.
Because, like, the actual goal itself, it was a great angle, it was a great play. I think all 3 of these were fantastic play. This might have been, I don't know if you'd put it ahead of the Bailey Fritsch bouncer, although that was also kind of created by defensive incompetence, whereas this was less so. This was just, there was no incompetence in any of these.
Then you have Darcy Burton-Jones game.
Well, there was some incompetence in this,
I guess, from Hawthorn retreating, but McEntee
and just not trying to turn the game into a series of stoppages.
Yeah, but in terms of the actual one play itself, McEntee getting the pressure and tackle, and Burton-Jones with just the tough angle on the kick itself. And then you had Harley Reid's 3 bouncer off the center clearance running away from Petrarca. The kick was actually from about 45 out.
I will not be bothered by any of these winning, although in terms of the actual goal itself, Rankin was the best. In terms of the actual individual play, Reid was the best.
In terms of the circumstances and what it meant to the game overall, it's clearly Burton-Jones.
I will not be bothered if either Rankin or Reid win this. What I usually use to grade these and grade marks is, does it make me say, holy shit, as it happens? And Burton-Jones's did because of the situation, but these would make you do it in any situation. So actually, I think I'm going to lean Reid, because if you take out the context in the game, I think Reid slightly beats Rankins. Rankins is still really cool.
I think this is going to go reverse chronological order. Reid, Burton-Jones, Rankin.
Can't complain about any of these, although, again, Burton-Jones, the situation within the game kind of affected it.
Your round 9 main character was a man who we have since learned his name, Justin Whitcomb.
So we know his name, but we don't know Magpie Jesus' name.
You think it's Mark.
I forget if it's Mark or Tom. It's something very ordinary.
But Whitcomb is the facing Collingwood fan who cuddled Harvey Johnston's head and took the ball from him. He has been banned through season's end.
Round 10, I have 4 to consider, though I think there's one who's going to have to get it based off of our discussions. The ones that don't get it,
the also-rans.
The didgeridoo player at the SCG, because they showed him after every goal, and also it's a chance to say,
hi, didgeridoo player.
I don't think this will be the round for the Timbale man, though, or the Paella man.
Yo, Paella man, wing one up here.
Darcy Burton-Jones, we kind of already talked about that. Also, in that same line of thought, Sam Mitchell, they kept showing him as they blew that game, and it was his poor management that was really costly. Even Hawthorn fans admit that. But I think the winner has to be, especially because we were discussing him in the context of another game, has to be Isaac Rankin, right?
Yeah, running too far, pulling the hamstring. I think it was in the Lions game where there was a big hairy shark run and people said, measure that shit. And to the entire round, you just kept going back to that. So, and was it Len Phillips? It was one of our Twitter people who, when Harley had his awesome goal, was good awareness by Harley Reid to bounce that 3 times. I think the Creed might have mentioned something about it too.
Yes. I think it was the Creed.
So yes, Isaac Rankin, congratulations. You are the main character of round 10. Hopefully you have a speedy recovery from this latest injury. that's going to do it for us after what's probably going to be one of our lengthier recaps.
I did not think it was going to be like this because, like, going into this round, I mean, were there any games that you really looked at as like, oh man, this is going to be...
I don't think I anticipated this as a super long recap. I mean, it was our shortest preview yet of a full round this season, and yet this might be one of our longest actual recaps. So this game, this league, this sport, full of surprises. I'm not trying to be like cliche at all, but I love when we get surprised like this.
We just love the footy.
Thanks, Basil.
Well, actually, I don't think you liked getting surprised the way you were on Thursday night.
No, I did not. But I mean, other than that, great round. I just want to make sure to keep people intrigued. I've got a really good pick for main character when we make our predictions at the end of our round 11 preview. You will not want to miss that. I'm on Twitter at Castle Media. Brian's on Instagram at catnamebrian, which is really all that matters here.
I am on Twitter at BenjaminHK01. Collectively, we are at Americans Footy on various socials, and we hope to catch you again very soon. Yeah, are we going to get called for a podcast free kick for letting this episode run too long?